What if the real reason people don't respect you has nothing to do with your talent, your intelligence, or your hard work? What if the truth is far simpler and far more uncomfortable? Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that the way people treat you was never decided by them. It was quietly decided by you. Not by what you say about yourself, not by the image you try to project, but by one simple rule you follow every single day without even noticing it. Think about the last time someone ignored your opinion. The last time someone interrupted you. The last time someone dismissed your effort like it didn't matter. It hurts, doesn't it? Because deep down, every human being wants the same thing. We want to be seen. We want to be valued. We want to know that we walk into a room, our presence means something. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Respect is not something you demand. It is something you train people to give you. And most people are unknowingly training others to do the exact opposite. They over-explain, they over-apologize. They chase approval. They say yes when every part of them wants to say no. They laugh at jokes that make them uncomfortable. They tolerate behavior that quietly tells the world, my time is not that important. My boundaries are flexible. My standards are negotiable. And people notice. Not consciously, not deliberately, but instinctively. Because human beings are incredibly sensitive to signals. Every conversation, every reaction, every decision you make sends a silent message about how you see yourself. And the world simply reflects that message back to you. The strange thing about respect is that it doesn't come from power, money, or status. We have all seen people with authority who are secretly ignored. We have all seen people with titles who are not truly respected. And we have also seen the opposite, the quiet person in the room whose words make everyone pause. Why does that happen? Because respect follows a rule most people never learn. It's not about being louder. It's not about being aggressive. It's not about proving you are better than anyone else. The real rule is far simpler and far more powerful. People respect the standards you consistently enforce, not the standards you talk about, the standards you live by. If you tolerate disrespect, people will repeat it. If you tolerate being ignored, people will continue ignoring you. If you tolerate being the last priority, the world will treat you like an option. But the moment you quietly change the standard, everything begins to shift. And once you understand how this rule works, you start seeing it everywhere, in leadership, in friendships, in relationships, in business, in every room you walk into. Because the people who command real respect are not trying to impress anyone. They are simply refusing to betray their own standards. And that changes everything. Let me show you something most people completely miss about respect. It is not created in big dramatic moments. It is built in small decisions that happen every single day. Think about someone you truly respect. Not someone famous, not someone powerful, someone in your real life. A person whose presence changes the energy in a room. When they speak, people listen. When they set a boundary, people accept it. When they walk away from something, no one questions it. Now ask yourself a simple question. What makes them different? It is not that they are louder. It is not that they argue more. It is not that they try harder to prove themselves. In fact, it is usually the opposite. They are calm, clear, certain. And certainty is one of the most powerful signals a human being can send. Most people think respect comes from convincing others. They think if they just explain themselves better, defend their choices harder, or justify their decisions longer, people will finally understand them. But the strange truth is that over-explaining often weakens your position. Because when you constantly explain your boundaries, you unintentionally send a message that those boundaries are negotiable. Imagine someone says something disrespectful to you. Many people react immediately. They rush to defend themselves. They argue. They try to prove why the other person is wrong. But watch what truly confident people do. They pause. Sometimes they say very little. Sometimes they simply look at the person and calmly say, that doesn't work for me. And then they stop talking, no debate, no emotional explosion, no long explanation, just clarity. And something powerful happens in that moment. The room shifts. People suddenly realize there is a line they cannot cross. Respect grows in the space where your standards are clear and your behavior consistently protects them. Let me tell you a short story. There was a young professional who worked incredibly hard, smart, talented, dedicated. But in meetings, people constantly interrupted him. His ideas were ignored until someone else repeated them. His schedule was overloaded because he never said no. He thought the problem was his experience. Maybe he needed more achievements. Maybe he needed more confidence. But the real problem was much simpler. He had unknowingly trained everyone around him to treat his time like it had no value. He would answer messages instantly, even late at night. He would accept last-minute work requests. He would apologize for things that were not even his responsibility. One day, he changed one small behavior. When someone interrupted him in a meeting, he calmly said, "Let me finish." No anger, no frustration, just calm certainty. And the room went quiet, not because he raised his voice, but because for the first time, he protected his own standard. That small moment began changing how everyone treated him. Now here is the part that surprises most people. The moment you start protecting your standards, something uncomfortable happens first. Not respect, resistance, because the people around you have become used to a certain version of you. They are used to the version that says yes quickly, that stays quiet when interrupted, that accepts last-minute demands, that tolerates small acts of disrespect just to keep the peace. And when that version suddenly changes, people notice immediately. Imagine someone who has always answered messages at midnight. The moment they stop responding late at night, the first reaction is not admiration. The first reaction is confusion, sometimes even irritation. Why didn't you reply? What happened? You used to respond immediately. But what they are really saying is this: you changed the rule. And when you change the rule, people test the boundary. This is where most people fail, not because they lack confidence, but because they become uncomfortable when others push back. They feel guilty. They feel pressure. They feel the urge to return to the old behavior just to make things easy again. But respect is not built by making things easy. Respect is built by making standards clear. Let me give you an example that happens every single day. Someone asks you to do something that you simply do not have time for. Your schedule is already full, your energy is limited, and saying yes would mean sacrificing something important. Most people respond like this: "I'm really sorry, I wish I could, maybe I'll try, let me see." They soften the no so much that it no longer sounds like a no. It sounds like hesitation, and hesitation invites negotiation. But watch how people who command respect respond. They are polite, they are calm, but they are clear. "I can't commit to that right now," and no long explanation, no guilt-filled apology, no emotional discomfort, just clarity. And something interesting happens when you do this consistently. At first, people might question it, they might test it. But over time, they start adjusting their expectations, because humans adapt quickly to patterns. If someone knows you always say yes, they will ask endlessly. If someone knows you rarely protect your time, they will schedule over it. But if someone learns that your time, your energy, and your standards are not negotiable, something shifts in their mind. They start respecting the boundary before they even reach it. This is why the simple rule works everywhere: in friendships, in workplaces, in leadership, in relationships. Respect grows when your behavior shows that your values are real. Not just words you say when it is convenient, but standards you defend even when it is uncomfortable. And the people who understand this secret do not try to control others. They simply control what they accept. Here is where the rule becomes even more powerful. Respect is not only about what you say no to, it is also about what you refuse to chase. Most people spend an enormous amount of energy trying to be liked. They try to make everyone comfortable. They try to avoid disagreement. They try to adjust their personality depending on who is in the room. At first, this seems harmless. It even feels polite. But over time, it creates a quiet problem. When you constantly adjust yourself to gain approval, people stop seeing who you really are. They only see the version of you that reacts to their expectations. And strangely, the more someone chases approval, the less respect they receive. Because respect grows from authenticity, not performance. Think about the people who naturally command attention in a room. They are not trying to impress everyone. They are not constantly scanning faces to see who agrees with them. They are not shaping every sentence to avoid disagreement. They simply speak with honesty and calm conviction. They are comfortable with the fact that not everyone will like them. And that comfort is incredibly powerful. There is a quiet confidence in someone who does not need approval to feel secure. It signals that their identity is not controlled by the reactions of others. Let me tell you about a situation that happens in many workplaces. A team is discussing a new idea. Most people in the meeting remain silent because they sense the majority leaning in one direction. No one wants to challenge the group. No one wants to risk sounding wrong. But one person calmly says, "I see it a little differently." The room becomes quiet, not because the person was aggressive, not because they tried to dominate the conversation, but because they showed something rare: independent thinking. That moment immediately creates respect, even from people who disagree. Why? Because courage signals strength. When someone respectfully expresses a different perspective without fear, it shows that their confidence does not depend on group approval. Now compare that to someone who constantly changes their opinion, depending on who spoke last. People may smile politely at them, but deep down they do not trust their voice. Consistency builds credibility, and credibility builds respect. This is why the simple rule becomes clearer the more you observe human behavior. Respect is not about pleasing everyone. It is about being clear about who you are and what you stand for. When your actions consistently reflect your values, people begin to recognize something stable about you, something predictable, something solid. And humans are naturally drawn to that kind of stability. Because in a world where many people constantly shift their behavior to gain approval, someone who stands calmly in their own principles feels rare. That rarity is powerful. And it quietly changes how people see you, listen to you, and treat you. There is another truth about respect that many people discover too late in life. You cannot force people to respect you. You can only create the conditions where respect naturally appears. And those conditions begin with something extremely simple, but incredibly difficult for many people: self-respect. Because the world is constantly watching how you treat yourself. If you constantly criticize yourself, people notice. If you laugh at yourself in a way that lowers your own value, people absorb that signal. If you allow others to cross your boundaries again and again, the message becomes very clear. You are teaching people what is acceptable. And once that lesson is learned, it becomes a pattern. Let me give you a powerful example. Imagine two people starting a new job at the same time. Both are intelligent. Both are hardworking. Both want to succeed. But the way they treat themselves is completely different. The first person is constantly trying to prove their worth. They volunteer for everything, even when their schedule is full. They answer emails immediately, even late at night. When someone interrupts them in a meeting, they stop talking and quietly wait. They believe they are being helpful. But what others see is someone whose time and voice can be easily replaced. Now look at the second person. They are just as hardworking, but they move differently. When they speak in meetings, they finish their thoughts. When their schedule is full, they politely decline extra tasks. When they make a mistake, they acknowledge it without collapsing into self-blame. There is a quiet balance in how they treat themselves. They work hard, but they do not abandon their own standards to earn approval. And very quickly, something interesting happens. People begin to treat them differently, not because they demanded respect, but because their behavior signaled that their time, energy, and voice had value. This is the hidden connection most people miss. Respect from others grows directly from the respect you show yourself. If you constantly sacrifice your boundaries to please others, the world interprets that sacrifice as a sign that your boundaries are flexible. But when you treat your own standards as important, people start adjusting their behavior around you. Now, this does not mean becoming arrogant. It does not mean believing you are better than others. In fact, the people who truly command respect are often the most humble individuals in the room. The difference is that their humility is not weakness. It is strength with balance. They respect others deeply, but they refuse to disrespect themselves in the process. And when people witness that balance, something powerful happens. Trust begins to grow. Because respect and trust are closely connected. When someone clearly values their own principles, others begin to believe those principles are real, not temporary, not situational, real. And that quiet consistency begins changing every interaction they have. There is a moment that quietly defines whether people will respect you or slowly begin to overlook you. And most people don't even notice when that moment happens. It usually appears during pressure, when something goes wrong, when emotions rise, when expectations collide. In those moments, people reveal what their standards truly are. Anyone can speak confidently when everything is easy. Anyone can appear calm when there is no challenge, but the real signal of character shows up when things become uncomfortable. Imagine a meeting where a mistake has been made. The tension in the room is obvious. Everyone is waiting to see how the situation will unfold. Some people immediately panic. They start explaining. They rush to protect their image. They point fingers. They speak faster, louder, trying to escape the pressure. But watch the person who commands real respect. They pause. They take responsibility for what is theirs, without drama and without excuses. I missed that detail. I'll correct it. And then they focus on the solution. That simple response carries enormous power, because calm accountability sends a signal that is extremely rare. It tells everyone in the room that this person values truth more than ego, that their identity is strong enough to handle mistakes without collapsing. And people trust those individuals far more than the ones who desperately try to look perfect. The strange thing about respect is that perfection is not impressive. Authenticity is. When someone is honest about their limitations, honest about their mistakes, and honest about their intentions, people begin to relax around them. They feel safe because they know the person is real. Now compare that with someone who constantly tries to protect their image, someone who avoids responsibility, who hides behind excuses, who shifts blame when something goes wrong. At first, they may appear confident, but over time, people see the pattern, and once trust disappears, respect quietly disappears with it. This is why strong leaders are not the ones who pretend to know everything. They are the ones who are strong enough to say, "I don't know yet," because that sentence shows clarity, not weakness. It shows that their confidence does not depend on pretending. It depends on learning, and learning requires honesty. So when you look closely at people who command deep respect, you begin to notice a pattern. They do not waste energy trying to protect an image of perfection. Instead, they focus on protecting their integrity. They keep their word. They admit when they are wrong. They stand by their values even when it costs them something. And those small decisions, repeated again and again, build a reputation that becomes stronger than any title or authority. People eventually realize something very simple about them. What they say can be trusted. And when your words can be trusted, your presence begins to carry weight. Not because you demanded attention, but because your character quietly earned it. There is another layer to respect that most people never fully understand. And once you see it, you start recognizing in every conversation, every relationship, and every room you walk into. Respect is deeply connected to emotional control. Not the ability to hide emotions, but the ability to manage them. Because the moment someone can easily control your emotions, they also control your behavior. And when people can control your reactions, respect slowly disappears. Think about the situations where people lose respect the fastest. It is rarely because someone lacked intelligence or skill. More often, it is because they lost control of themselves. A small criticism turns into anger. A disagreement turns into shouting. A minor frustration becomes a dramatic reaction that fills the entire room. In those moments, people are not focused on the message anymore. They are focused on the emotional explosion. And something subtle happens in the minds of everyone watching. They realize that this person can be easily triggered. Now compare that with someone who faces the exact same situation but responds differently. Imagine someone criticizes their idea in a meeting. The room becomes quiet, waiting for the reaction. Instead of reacting immediately, they listen. They pause. And then they calmly say, "That's an interesting perspective." Let's look at it. No defensive tone, no emotional reaction, just control. That moment creates a completely different signal. It shows that their emotions do not control their decisions. It shows that pressure does not easily shake them. And humans naturally respect emotional stability because stability creates safety. When people know you will not explode under pressure, they feel more comfortable sharing ideas, discussing problems, and trusting your judgment. But when someone reacts emotionally to every challenge, people begin walking on eggshells around them. They avoid honest conversations. They avoid disagreement. And slowly, real respect disappears. This is why some of the most powerful individuals in any environment are not the loudest voices. They are the calmest ones. They speak slowly. They listen carefully. They respond with intention rather than impulse. And this calm presence has a surprising effect on others. It lowers tension in the room. It creates space for thoughtful discussion. It makes people feel like the situation is under control. That is why emotional discipline is one of the strongest signals of inner strength. Not because emotions are bad, but because the ability to guide them shows maturity. It shows awareness. It shows that your actions are not controlled by temporary feelings. And the more consistently you demonstrate that control, the more people begin to see you differently. They begin to see someone who cannot be easily shaken, someone who thinks before reacting, someone who carries stability into every interaction. And that stability quietly commands respect long before you ever ask for it. Here's the part that most people never fully grasp: respect is cumulative. It is not won in a single moment, a single conversation, or a single action. It grows quietly, slowly over time, through repeated signals that you send to the world. Every choice you make, every boundary you enforce, every promise you keep or break adds up. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. We observe behavior. We remember it. And over time, those memories combine into a picture of who you are. That picture determines how people treat you, even when you are not in the room. Think about the people you deeply respect in your own life. They did not earn it overnight. They did not do one dramatic thing to demand attention. They built it day by day, silently, consistently, in ways that were almost invisible at the time. They showed up on time. They kept their word. They spoke honestly. They protected their boundaries. They managed their emotions. They refused to chase approval. They treated themselves with respect, and they treated others with fairness. Each small action is like a brick. Alone, it is easy to overlook. But after months, years, even decades, those bricks form a foundation. And that foundation is unshakable. The tricky part is that this process often feels invisible while it is happening. You may not notice immediate change in how people treat you. You may feel frustrated that respect is not automatic. But here's the critical insight: consistency compounds. The patterns you reinforce now become the rules others follow later. Let me illustrate this with a story. A young professional joins a team. At first, no one pays much attention. They are new, their voice is quiet, their habits unknown. But this professional is careful. They speak when it matters, they finish every task they commit to, they stay calm when challenges arise, and they refuse to tolerate disrespect quietly. At first, some colleagues test the boundaries. They push, they interrupt, they ask favors that are unreasonable. But the young professional holds steady. Every consistent action reinforces one message: in my time, my voice and my standards matter. Months pass and a shift occurs. Meetings are different. Conversations are different. People listen. People wait their turn. People value their input. They did not demand this respect. They did not fight for it. They created it silently, one action at a time. And here's the takeaway: the simple rule works everywhere. Respect is not given to the loudest, the smartest, or the most charming. Respect is given to those who consistently live by standards that communicate value, not just once, but again and again. This is the invisible power most people never notice until it is too late. Respect is built brick by brick, silently, deliberately, and without shortcuts. Now we reach the moment where everything comes together. The simple rule I've been describing is deceptively powerful, and the reason it works is because it taps into the deepest instincts of human behavior. People are wired to recognize patterns. They unconsciously evaluate who's reliable, who is consistent, who is stable, and who honors their own standards. The world does not reward loudness, charm, or temporary displays of confidence. It rewards consistency. It rewards integrity. It rewards the invisible signals that quietly communicate: this person matters, their time matters, their voice matters. Imagine walking into any room with that presence. Not an aggressive, demanding presence, but a calm, steady one. You do not need to assert dominance. You do not need to prove yourself. People notice it immediately. They adjust. They begin to treat you differently, because your behavior has set the standard for how they should respond. The most remarkable thing about this rule is that it works in every area of life. In leadership, it builds teams that trust and follow you willingly. In friendships, it creates bonds that are deep and unshakable. In family, it encourages respect without resentment. In business, it builds reputations that last far longer than any marketing campaign or flashy success. But there is a catch. This rule only works if you apply it relentlessly, not occasionally. Now convene every day, every interaction. Every decision becomes a chance to reinforce your standard. Every moment is an opportunity to signal: I respect myself, and therefore you should too. Let me give you a story to make this real. There was a manager who was constantly ignored by her team. They interrupted her, dismissed her ideas, and overstepped boundaries. One day she decided to stop tolerating it. She calmly enforced her standards. She spoke clearly, finished her points, followed up on every commitment, and refused to answer messages outside her defined hours unless urgent. At first, there was pushback. Some were confused. Some tested the boundaries. But over time, the team adjusted. Meetings became productive. Ideas were heard. Deadlines were respected. And most importantly, her presence was no longer negotiable. Her time, voice, and authority carried weight naturally. She did not demand respect. She created it by simply living her standard consistently. This is the ultimate truth. Respect is not about power, status, or approval. Respect is earned by protecting your boundaries, honoring your word, managing your emotions, and consistently demonstrating that your standards matter. When you live this rule, you stop chasing validation, you stop over-explaining, you stop compromising your values, and the world begins to respond differently, quietly, instinctively, inevitably, because human beings will always recognize strength when it is calm, consistent, and real. This is the simple rule. Live it, protect it, repeat it, and respect will follow you everywhere.